Good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Those of you who have just come in, if you could drop into the chat box, please let us know where you are calling in from. And then we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome my dear, dear friend, my teacher and mentor, Jeffrey Armstrong, who is a Vedic scholar. He is a Jyotish teacher and master. He is also an author of a number of really great books. And he is the author of the new translation of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive, a radical translation. I've already seen the galleys for it. It's an extraordinary book. Reviews are coming in from people like Dr. David Frawley, Dr. Vasant Lad, people in Mumbai and Delhi, people around the world are already starting to receive their copies and saying it is indeed a radical translation that is encouraging in each one of us a radical transformation. With that, I would like to introduce you to Jeffrey. Thank you very, very much, Jeffrey, for being with us.
Thank you, Laura.
Welcome.
It's really quite humbling and beautiful to see what happens when profound wisdom fertilizes a human being from their nascent stage of being. And this is true for every one of us. We have this potential in us, and we sense it if we're at all aware. And I think part of our greatest frustration in life is that that potential in us is still latent and it hasn't come out. And this dharmic wisdom is like some grand cosmic fertilizer that if you put it on the soil, the tree starts to grow. The tree of who we really are starts to grow. So Laura, it's wonderful to be here with you today and in the context of your grace and so many people that you've attracted into this discussion about who we really are. It's usual for those who've received this knowledge to begin speaking by honoring the teachers from whom they've received it. There are different mantras to the Guru. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu is one of the favorites. But because I came from complete darkness and this knowledge came to me, I'm very fond of a particular mantra which goes like this. Omagana Timirandasya Ganangana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Genatasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chakshur Unmilitam. I couldn't see. I was born blind. I was in the darkness of avidya. I hadn't been given the keys yet. I hadn't been awakened yet. And I knew it, but I didn't know what to do about it. So I sort of went everywhere, looking under every rock, turning everything this way and that way. There was a missing vitamin. And the universal experience of everyone who's met a guru, met someone who is full with truth and only alive still to deliver it to everyone else. No other motive for being here. One who has that experience literally knows something which is the statement of the Vedas that the Guru, male or female, is our new father. And the Vedic knowledge is our mother. So I was blind, I couldn't see, I was in darkness. And my Guru came to me and with the torchlight of knowledge, forced open my eyes at my request. Please pry them open. And so we say, I received darshan of a guru. from the word dristi in Sanskrit. And chakshus is the eyes with which we receive that drishti. But the famously misspoken third eye, the one that sees beyond the duality and chaos we've experienced in matter and sees clearly, when that eye opens, it's opened by something called Shastra Chakshus. Shastra Chakshus is that which opens the third eye, the eye of direct knowing and direct seeing. That is the eye that reaches out from the Atma within us, from our true immortal self. Was blind and now I see. Back to you, Laura.
You're just inspiring so many songs today. So we had talked about, what I had shared with our friends is that we would talk today about how to live majestically in troubled times, how to stay soft and tender in the heart, even as we stand brave in the world. Any thoughts on that?
Well, part of my ancestry, I was born in the United States, and part of it goes back to Texas. My grandfather. And I've lived in Texas. I went to school there for a year, so occasionally I'll adopt an accent when I answer certain questions. So there's a saying in Texas that you never get in a fight with an ugly person, they got nothing to lose.
Which means?
The Vedas say whatever you associate with, you have a tendency to become like. And therefore, what we're doing right now, Sangha, coming together with the same hunger.
Folks, can you please mute? It's helpful if you can mute. I'm trying to mute this one, but it won't mute. Thanks.
Coming together with the same hunger and holding that same focus. Think of that third eye in each of us, creating an illuminated place for truth to flow down and be revealed to us. When we all hold that vision of one another, we see one another as travelers across time and space, not limited to be our body, but from an immortal perspective. That's really what this means. That I see you as this immortal being who decided to go on this bold adventure into the realm of matter, and here we are.
So Sangha and this is our way of keeping tenderness in the heart.
It's also a way of saying something that's the great secret of yoga, which is pose, counterpose, pose, counterpose, breath in, pause, breath out. That pause in between, that spot that we're looking for, is otherwise known as the Vishnu Lakshmi spot. It's the place of perfect balance in a world of contesting forces. And a yogi is someone who learns to find that spot. And you've seen the carpenter's bubble, the level that when it's just right, the bubble goes right to that spot. So there's a place that we're supposed to see everything from, but everything pulls us off that spot. Everything tends to bring us into instability. And a yogi is someone who's in charge now of that spot. And doesn't let circumstance define whether they're there or not. So no matter what comes at them, they feel it, they rock and reel for a moment, and then they come back.
Hmm.
And that's what we're in charge of.
Hmm. You know, that's so beautiful, because I think a lot of people want to be a yogi or want to be centered and feel they've failed somehow if the world does act upon them in turbulent ways. And what you're saying is that the world will do that. You were speaking yesterday about someone we love who has moon in Taurus, for those who are Jyotishis. And you said that he's an empath. And so, of course, he's really feeling the depths of suffering and the depths of confusion in this world today. That doesn't make him wrong, I hear you say.
Quite the contrary, that makes him what they call in Sanskrit, and this is an interesting word, it's called adhikari. Adhikari went into Greek as edukari and into English as education. So adhikari in Sanskrit means the eligibility of a person, the readiness of a person to receive the next empowerment. If you give it too soon, they'll choke on it, or reject it, or be offended by it. So adhikari is the art of the guru knowing you're ready for the next step. And they just sort of reach out like that to see if you reach for it. In Greek, it became edukari, which meant to bring out from inside. But now, unfortunately, our education means to pile on top of. Right now, we're burying the children in our care in a pile of useless knowledge, untrue history, so many things. And in the Gurukulas of India, they were first taught things that are always true, so that they knew how to work with contested situations of truth, like we're seeing in the world now. Mm. So adhikari is that stage of qualification. So we're supposed to start every conversation with this, and then ask questions until we find out the level of the person's interest, and then feed them the next morsel that will nurture them. Not talk about what we want to talk about, but take them to the incremental next step that they're actually hungry and asking for. This is the protocol for delivering Vedic knowledge to people. So I've framed it in English as not with coercion, not with conversion, but with gentle conversation.
Lovely. And you do that so well. So it does remind me of Ayurveda, where we seek to strengthen the digestive fire for optimal health. What can we do to strengthen the digestive fire so that we are ready for the next morsel?
This time in history has brought this so home to me so clearly. If you didn't see it before, by the way, I heard a statistic recently that allopathic doctors in general, bless their hearts, have a life expectancy of 53 years. Amazing. Our national average in the United States for men is 73. I think it's 10 years more for the ladies, which tells you something pretty important. And so this medical system that we have is made for emergencies. And there's many sincere people in it who give their lives to helping people in those emergency moments. But they have no idea whatsoever about what to do the rest of the time, about how to live. And so I've been saying this recently to people so they understand it. The worst possible thing that could happen when you go into the hospital is that you eat hospital food. Aside from, you're obviously there for some emergency. So what Laura said is so important, that in many ways, this is the historical moment for Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, naturopathy, chiropractic, a whole series, homeopathy, of medical disciplines who have this same premise of fostering the life force first and asking the question, what does foster the life force? And this is what we're all seeing is missing in this panic over what to do over the flu.
Mm-hmm. You were actually continuing on that yesterday, and you were talking about how wouldn't it be great if we could bring Ayurvedic practitioners, or at least cooks, to the hospitals.
Into the hospitals.
Right.
What if there was someone who walked to every patient, took their pulses, looked at them, and understood? Actually, Laura, I was just seeing a definition the other day that a Vaidya is someone who's advanced enough in Ayurveda that they empathically as well as scientifically know what to do.
Mm.
I had a marvelous experience of this once. Andy and I met an Ayurvedic doctor and his wife, and they invited us for dinner. And we were all there talking. And the doctor, the Ayurvedic doctor, said to me, "Can I take your pulses and tell you when you got your childhood diseases, at what age?" I said, "Certainly." And he said, "Okay, mumps at this age, chicken pox at 12, this, measles, this. And they said, "Is that right?" And I said, "Yes, and you're moon in Cancer, aren't you?"
Right.
And he said, "Yes, I am."
I think you might need to explain that a little bit.
A good way to think of it is, I made up a saying recently that a scientist is someone who knows a great deal about 1% of the universe, about 1% of existence. So each modality, each methodology is a training to observe certain things. And what in Sanskrit, the word is siddhi. There's a perfection that's potential in us, but you have to practice a certain way to bring it out. And when it comes out, you can feel the pulses and they talk to you. When you bring it out, you can feel the state of empathy in another person and read it and put a name on it. Jyotish, Vedic astrology. The planet's position has a particular feeling. You can feel that just as you know one kind of spice from another kind of spice, blindfolded.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So these skill sets, many of the great ancient cultures cultivated these skill sets. And the rush to modernity, we've just disregarded them all, buried them all, and sent them away at our peril.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. One of the things that comes to mind is this idea that dharana, or single-pointed concentration on a thing, as ancient texts will tell us, single-pointed concentration on one thing will eventually cause that thing to reveal its secrets to you.
Yes, hence da, to give, ra, illumination, na, and not to be distracted by anything else.
Yeah. Can I pause to interpret something? So I think for those who are, well, what Jeffrey's talking about is that an Ayurvedic practitioner was able to feel his pulses and tell his medical history by his pulse, which is really extraordinary when you think that the pulse is so current. And yet all of the history was revealing there. And Jeffrey was able to respond, because Jeffrey's a Jyotish master, by knowing what that person's moon, where that moon was posited when the person was born, without the person having said anything. Jeffrey knew that he would have had a moon in Cancer, which is a great guess, but of course for Jeffrey it wasn't a guess. So that's
was as direct a seeing as was his seeing of the particular departments of my pulse
beautiful.
That indicate times in my history. Pretty remarkable skill.
So beautiful. So Dharma, And dharmocracy, a term that you've coined recently. Dharma, when we look to the text, when we look to the stories that teach us something about Dharma, we look way back in time. Your friend puts the Bhagavad Gita at something like 5,500 something BC. He was able to locate it in time. How is it relevant, not just to our modern times, but to now, this very current time?
If you think about the people all around you and watch them carefully, imagine that to some degree or the other, they're thinking a very short amount of time, and their perspective in life is based on having just a little window of time. It's somewhat ironic that the New Age movement said be in the now, when according to yogis, that's exactly the problem, is that you're trapped in the moment and you don't have a bigger view of time. By seeing it from that perspective, you've gotten pulled down into a particular moment and you're lost there. So the term in Sanskrit is Atma. All of us who are in this regard the same, we're immortal beings who cannot die. So just think of that for a moment. Think that you cannot die. Now, realize what would happen if you really, really understood that. If it became yours, and that was your new normal. Then when someone says, I'm going to kill you, you'd smile and say, sorry, you can't do that. You can inconvenience me. In fact, there's a famous story of Socrates, and it's known that the Vedic knowledge went to Greece through Pythagoras and then Socrates, whose disciples then were Plato and Aristotle. So Vedic knowledge, yogic knowledge came into the West via these Greeks. But Socrates got in big trouble for teaching what I'm saying to you right now, that we're the Atma and we're immortal and we can't die. So his fellow citizens said, if you keep saying that, we're going to kill you. Kind of ironic. So finally, he did keep saying it, and they said, okay, we have to kill you then. Here. And they gave a couple of choices. One was exile, the other was drink poison, hemlock. He said, I'll take the poison. So when the time came, all of his disciples were around him, and it's time for him to drink the poison. He's about to drink it, and one of his disciples says, Guruji, he says, how do you want to be buried? And Socrates says, well, actually, you'll have to find me first. In other words, you can only bury my body. You can't bury me. I can't be touched. And all of our fear and anxiety is tied up in allowing that definition of self to shift to something temporary. So Dharma is related to that. If we're an immortal visiting here, then this is a planned program. So this is a designed universe. And the more we work with it, the better it works. The more we work against it, the worse it goes. So the word Dharma is rooted in Dri, which means the essential nature of the thing, which if you take it away, it is no longer itself. A Dharma culture tries to use everything according to its correct intention when it was designed, so that the outcome is beneficial for everyone. And that's what we're missing in our world right now. We don't have enough people using everything according to the laws of nature.
I love the idea, the remembering that in ancient times in India, the most sattvic person would be consulted before large decisions would be taken, decisions that would impact all. So for instance, the king might consult with the guru so that the action would be the most beneficial for all. Imagine that.
The call torqued a little bit for a moment. Would you repeat that, please?
Oh, yes. So also I wanted to say, I guess, let me just pause a sec. So Sharon let me know that when I asked you the question earlier about the Bhagavad Gita, I was referring to your friend Nilesh, and I put this in the chat box, who has written a book called When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? And he's actually been able to locate it in time to October 16th, 5561 BC. And of course, your book is launching this October 16th.
Yes, and he did that with astronomy, because in the Mahabharata, which is the largest story that has been passed down historically to human beings, 100,000 Sanskrit verses. In the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata, there are about 250 astronomical references to what the sky was doing at the moment of the Mahabharata conflict, and that is the moment during which the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And from that, he has, because the wobble of the Earth's pole changes the relation of the stars to each other as we see them in the sky. Stars which otherwise appear not to move because the pole of the Earth wobbles once every 25,920 years. And that means every 2,160 years, the sign of the zodiac rising with the sun on the first day of spring shifts backwards. So during the time of the Greeks, we were in the age of Aries. We're now in the age of Pisces. And when the Age of Aquarius song came out, I said, well, almost, just 400 years to go. So don't sell your mugs and t-shirts yet.
There'll be collector's items in 400 years.
You may collect them. So Nilesh is the first person to use those calculations in the Mahabharata, which was written in that same time period, created, that is to say, as was the Bhagavad Gita. So he put all of those calculations together and said, then here's the only time in astronomical history when this could occur. Truly brilliant work. First person to do this.
Which is actually, I think, in itself amazing, but I think just truly brilliant, the Vedic mind that actually left for us these clues that would be indestructible clues.
Yes. Well, and this is something everybody needs to learn to talk about a little bit without falling into the trap of it looking like you're attacking religion. This is one of the memes that's used to keep people from speaking the truth. But it is a historical fact that some people who had some very great knowledge went off the rails and started trying to force that knowledge on everyone in very violent and despicable ways. So you have to learn to say this just right. So you're talking about somebody misusing a term like personal freedom. They misused a term and said, this is our religion. We get to force everyone to agree with us. But you see, religio means to link back to the source, very much in the same way that yoga means that. And the divine would never do that. So you might say, in the name of being divine, people acted very despicably. And still, we allow that to be called a religion. But we're in a time right now where we have to sort this out. And that's where Dharma is so interesting. Because Dharma culture cannot force itself upon anyone. You cannot be dharmic and coerce or force someone toward your viewpoint. You can only reason with them and try to be reasonable. So isn't it interesting that the Bhagavad Gita, a treatise on that reasonableness, was spoken while two groups of humans had an unavoidable conflict. So this is important for us to understand. This adversarialism that we see all around us right now, where things are misnamed in order to make them confusing, and so many lies are told and so many untruths that you have to fact check so carefully. This has gone on throughout history. And the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic knowledge was an attempt at truth-telling that would endure through time. So the important thing to understand, if someone asks, is that it's in Sanskrit. So the reason that Nilesh could do his calculations was that Sanskrit is an unchanging language, like mathematics. If you had a quadratic equation 5,000 years ago, you would solve it the same way now as then. The astronomy of the planets was the same then as it is now. So the Vedic Sanskrit and the knowledge that's been locked into it, that language was created to be so precise that it wouldn't drift away over time, that the meanings wouldn't get confused over time. And this is what we've just recently done with the Bhagavad Gita. We've taken out the inappropriate language, left about 100 Sanskrit words in the verses, because there's no English equivalent, so that this Gita is just the clearest Gita that's ever been presented in English so far, as close to what it was in the Sanskrit. So as all of you enter into the Sanskrit Vedic culture, please don't think of it as something you're joining or having blind faith in. Please think of it as a journey of learning with stages of learning, because that's how it's designed, because it doesn't want fanatical blind faith adherence. It's a part of the evolutionary process of every single one of us. And in this regard, we're all completely equals. We're Atmas on a long journey.
Beautiful. You removed the drift and restored the conversation at its essence.
If you ask people what words mean in English, I'll just tell you one so I don't go into too much linguistics. But if I asked you, tell me the exact meaning of God, you would all stumble and all give different words. And if you looked in the dictionary, it would also be quite confusing. That if I said next to you, but where does the word God come from? Then you would be stuck. You'd have some idea of what it means, but if you say what you're thinking, someone will know. But if you say God, they won't know what you're thinking. So the person listening will have their own idea, as if it's a totally subjective word. Okay, so now where did the word God come from? How did English get it? And as it turns out, it's a Sanskrit word. It even occurs 4 times in the Bhagavad Gita. The word is hutam, Hutam. And in the Vedic culture, you've seen these. They light a fire. They make an offering into the fire saying, thank you for dinner. Thank you for taking care of me. They're talking to nature as divine beings and to the supreme being. So this fire, yagya it's called, is to say thank you. So you put few pieces of what you're going to eat into the fire and say, here's some for you first. You have the first bite. It's like you make a beautiful dish and you give your beloved the first bite. So think of that. And so that's called a pagan fire sacrifice now, years later. So Hutam went into German as Gutam, Dutch as Gut, and English as God. So the actual meaning of the English word God, the go-to word for all Christians, is the smoke arising from the offering placed into a pagan fire sacrifice. That the people who say they don't like pagans borrowed their word, which means smoke from a fire, where you just placed an offering. That hutam became gutam, gut, and God. So now, without knowing that it's a Sanskrit word, all the Christians in the world are speaking Sanskrit that they don't understand, saying hutam, and saying, I don't like pagans and I don't like pagan fire sacrifices, but I like God. I like hutam. So I don't like the fire, I don't like the people, but I do like the smoke, I guess is what we say.
And I like that because, you know, at Lent, the ash cross goes on the forehead in the Catholic tradition. There's the ashes.
Because everyone has an intuition that the fire is important.
It goes right here in the third eye. Yeah.
Yes, because it comes from the sun also. So the fire came into the wood as sunshine. So the fire is another link to sunshine. So when you put something into a fire, you're saying here for you, and the smoke goes up. So that's how it all got started. But you see, these things have gotten purposely twisted, accidentally twisted, or they've drifted away. So this Vedic Renaissance that we're all a part of right now is bringing back these steadier meanings of who we are. And as I was saying a moment ago, if someone has only one life, if you thought you have an hour to live right now, you'd be quite upset. And that would color everything you're feeling right now. Is that, oh my gosh, you'd be looking at your watch. I have 20 minutes left to live. So if somebody tells you you only have one life, it terrorizes you. So the truth is, all the people around us are terrified. A yogi is someone who knows they can't. So back to what you said earlier about the truth teller, the reason they don't have any addictions, because they realize there's nothing they need. So they turn within and get all their pleasure from within. So you can't tempt them with anything anymore. You can't upset them. You can't redefine them. You can't convince them that they're going to die, because they already know that none of those things apply to them.
That's so beautiful. I feel like if I had an hour to live, it would give me the awareness that I hope. I think about Gandhi dying and getting shot suddenly on his way to prayers, and having the presence of mind to say, hey, Ram. And I feel like I might need that hour to get that presence of mind. But that's beautiful.
It is.
A couple things. Another word that's like hutam is, well, in English, human. I think that's a beautiful derivation out of Sanskrit. I don't know if you want to share that, or if we should move along to talk about.
Would you like to share it? Why don't you start them on that?
All right. Does anyone know where the word human comes from? And Jeffrey was sharing with me recently that it comes, I think you said it comes from humus, which is the soil of the earth. And my puppy's name is Bhumi, Bhumi.
So the word bhu in Sanskrit means to be. This is where we be. Or as they say in Detroit, what it be? What be going on? So what's your bhumi? So humus is, our body's made of humus. And bhumi is our mother. So we're humis or homies. Or we're omis.
We're omis.
There's high five and high 10.
Oh, beautiful.
So as omis, we know we're on bhumi. We know she's a being. We know she's our mother. So then we feel an obligation to keep her beautiful for the next generation. And we talk to her personally the way we would talk to our mother. She is our mother. And of course, in the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhu Bhuva Sva, here, in between, and there, everywhere the sun's light is shining. But you can't be anywhere. You can't boo. You can't do boo without being on bhumi. And if you don't cooperate with her and keep her healthy, who are you then? An ungrateful child. So human comes from bhumi and humus. And a very important word with it, we are not mankind. A terrible way to talk to the wonderful ladies. But ladies or males, we are not. We're atmas. But we're not mankind. We're manas kind. The word mankind is from the Sanskrit man, which means manas, not masculine. It means we're mind kind. So we're homies, and we're mind kind. We're the beings whose mind is the center of what we're going to do next, otherwise known as yoga. Otherwise known as controlling the mind with the Atma.
Well, this is already a lot to digest, but maybe stimulate some discussion around this by saying we talk about Dharma, talk about this beautiful new translation of Bhagavad Gita. Can we talk about Arjuna? And there's another character that you like to talk about as well. And both of those, one of the things I love about your talks and working with you is that you invite us to understand a cosmic perspective of the world and of our lives itself, this immortal idea. But also you invite us into epic narratives that I think help us move beyond our daily trials and tribulations into that perspective that gives us not only hope, but motivation to be all that we truly could be. So you have a really great perspective on that. Would you share? Who else but Arjuna?
And where Laura's leading us is where Gandhi was also. The term Mahatma is what I'm leading us all toward. It's an Atma with a cosmic perspective, as Laura started this out, showing that a Jyotishi, somebody who learns the laws of nature, a Vaidya, a Jyotishi, they all know that the whole thing is being held together by Dharma, by certain truths that are always true. And by adhering to those, a particular empowerment happens. So this Dharma culture is how we hold on to things that are always true. It is us becoming the servant of the laws of bhumi, of the laws of nature. So the us is people in masculine bodies or feminine bodies. And the other collateral damage of the two Abrahamic religions, Islam and Christianity, was that they got upset for some reason and angry at the feminine divine. In our culture, she is entirely missing. And it's hard to understand how deadly and dangerous and toxic that is and has been. But it's because, remember this, we are not male or female. We are inside a contrivance that is embodying the male and the female. In the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, what's usually translated as in the beginning created he them in his image created he them. It's actually the plural in Hebrew. It's in their image created they them. But we were told in his image created he them. So not only does the Vedic civilization immediately dismiss that and say, no, 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 you're not paying attention. The male and female forms are reflections of the male and female divine. Now, because the Bhagavad Gita was spoken on a battlefield, it's particularly easy for us to forget the feminine, unless you read the Mahabharata. But the backstory is that Arjuna, Yudhisthira, his brother, Bhima, his other brother, and the twin brothers, Nakula and Sahadev, 5 princes were by divine arrangement married to the same woman, whose name was Draupadi. Have you ever read another story that is of the most momentous global importance, where a single female was so remarkable that 5 of the most remarkable men of the age were wedded to her, and that she inspired all of them to be the best they could be? Can you even imagine a story like that in the context of the modern world? No. But this is the backstory behind the Bhagavad Gita. That in fact, the conflict was highlighted by the fact that this noble, amazing female named Draupadi, who was the feminine divine personified on earth, one group of the family men wanted to possess her, and you could say own her and exploit her. The other group of cousins in the story, Arjuna, Yudhisthira, Bhima, those cousins married her, and all were inspired by her wisdom, by her greatness, by her being. So the untold hidden part of the Bhagavad Gita is it's a love story, a tremendous love story of the trust and love that 5 great men had for their wife, Draupadi. And at the eve of years before, the cousins who were the exploiters, rapists, despicable men, and that's really what we're being shown, is despicable men and dharmic men. Those despicable men tried to drag Draupadi into the assembly, the public assembly, and disrobe her.
Mm.
We live in the midst of the rape, pillage, and disrobe the female culture. And sad to say, we've been living in it for 2,000 years.
Mm.
That rape and pillage culture is the opposite of the Bhagavad Gita, which is all about a remarkable mother who was the mother of these brothers, who were the personification of Dharma. The story is actually about the male and female embodied, behaving on earth dharmically like the male and female divine. And everyone in the Vedic culture knows that the female embodies the secrets of the divine, and the masculine embodies the protection and enabling of those secrets to keep the world beautiful and perfected. Mm. Mata Bhumi is the mother of a matriarchal culture. The Vedic civilization is a matriarchal culture which knows for sure that the job of the feminine in life is to protect life. We have disabled that, and in my personal opinion, the yoga movement, 80% female, is yogis who came back and said, yes, however we want to do this, I'm glad to do this. They came back in the female form. And I truly believe that if all 400 or 500 million female yogis stood up right now and said, okay, everybody, let's just chill. Let's relax. Let's stop hurting each other. Let's nurture life. Let's do this right. And so, of course, you, Laura, my partner, Sandy, so many wonderful embodiments right now are standing up and being that voice. We're starting to see this come back. So I'll tell you all a big secret. The word radical is also the root of Radha. Krishna and Radha are depicted as the ultimate masculine and feminine divine.
Love it.
Mahabharata is not a war story. It's a love story. And speaking of love, beloveds.
I love it.
On that note, I'm going to tell everybody here that when we translated, the royal we, we're working on the Sanskrit. One of the reasons I found it so hard to read all the other versions is that they were just so sexist, so hard to read. And as we were going through it, we realized that it wasn't sexist at all. It had been interpreted that way.
By bringing it into English, incorrectly.
And so we reversed all of that. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the verse, there's 701 verses, and every single translation out there has forgotten something, and it's got to do with the feminine divine, and we put it in. And that 701 verse is really the secret to, well, one of the many secrets to the whole Gita. So I'm not going to tell you, you'll have to go.
So beautiful. So, you know, it's interesting because I was married in England, and the laws there did still say that the man had certain ownership over the wife. And I often think that that mindset of wife as chattel leads to African as slave and land as exploitable. And what I hear then is what you're talking about is the solution, the resolution, not necessarily the singular rising of the feminine, but the rising of that unification, that remembrance of our true nature is what will help restore our beautiful world.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And this is called Shiva and Shakti, or Shakti and Shaktiman. So there's where the man word comes in. That Shakti, or the embodiment which the females are experiencing, is to be the energies of Mother Nature, to be the keeper of all of them. And the Shaktiman is the holder of those, not the controller of those, but the embracer of those in a partnership. That partnership happens at that balance point where Vishnu and Lakshmi together in their embrace bring life to balance and hold it together. And this is the Dharma that we are all pursuing in our yoga practice, both within ourselves and in society.
And I think, you know, to bring it back to Dharma, Laura, I think this is why the Bhagavad Gita is so important. It really gives you the standard of Dharma. It's so degraded now that we just lose hope. And to see how it really was when the Sanatana Dharma culture was flourishing, I mean, it's a dream to bring it back. And there are so many people working on that dream behind the scenes, and the yoga movement right now really needs to absorb more of this wisdom. And on that note, I wanted to share, if I can take a minute, after the Bhagavad Gita launch, we're going to launch a membership site on the Gita site, GitaComesAlive.com. And Jeffrey, who hasn't been teaching very much for the last couple of years because we've been writing, is going to be teaching and walking you through every Wednesday another section of the Bhagavad Gita. And he's going to committed to do that for a whole year. And I can assure you that is going to be a life-changing year. So it's just a ridiculously low price. It's not up there yet. If you sign up for the book launch, you just sign up for the membership on GitaComesAlive.com. We'll send you a notice of when it's ready. And I think by November 1st, you get the lowest price it's ever going to be. And you get a lot of benefits. You get the app for the Gita. You get access to his other site, jeffreyarmstrong.com. Those classes you can buy at half price, and you get access to 4 classes a week with him for less than 4 classes a week. So there's just so many benefits, but we're just so committed. We love this Gita. And we're just so committed to having everybody else benefit from. We'd give it away free if we could. It's just that we've got tech bills and rent. So,
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Laura, we're just so thrilled that you're supporting this project. We love all your friends and all of our friends that are on. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Sandy. So do we have 10 minutes of Jeffrey's time for Q&A? Okay.
Yeah, the doorbell's going to ring, but beg your pardon if it does. So you can have it for 10 minutes. And
All right, we'll take another 10 minutes if folks have Q&A. That was Sandy Graham, Jeffrey's Shakti and CEO. For those of you who don't know Sandy, right. That's great. I'm glad she was able to step in. And somebody, I think Marissa has put in those links. Andrea has. Thank you, Andrea. Those links for those of you who want those. So I just thought if people have some questions, why don't we have you type your question into the chat box, and I'll monitor the questions. And in the meanwhile, we're getting a lot of lovely comments, so many lovely bits of knowledge. Somebody wrote to say, sweet, Zubin wrote. And my friend Eva wrote to say, mind blown. So it's really amazing. You know, I knew that the word radical came from like radici, this word roots. I had no idea it came from Radha. How extraordinary is that?
It is the root that we come from, after all. If we all trace ourselves back, it is into the arms of our mother. So one of the great secrets of Bhagavan, that word, is that there are 6 bhagas: beauty, wealth, strength, fame, wisdom, and those qualities are the word van means one who has those qualities. And generosity was the 6th. One who has those 6 qualities to an unlimited degree. So just think for a moment of what attracts us in life. It's some beauty. It's the things, the empowerments that come with having the energy, the wealth to do things. It's knowledge that makes us more wonderful and brings out the greatness within us. So each of those 6 is what we've been pursuing as life. So just pull them into a singular entity and ask, would you now like to have a direct connection with the source of those 6 realities? Unlimited beauty, unlimited wealth, unlimited all of those. This is why it's a universal definition, because this is not a sect. This is the principle of life. It's the very principle of life itself. So for you, for this beautiful group that Laura has invited together, one more secret. The word Ra in Radha means radiant. And Krishna is called the Dark One. It means that a sun has radiance, but a black hole attracts even that radiance to its center. This knowledge is about the very core secrets of the entire universe. Radha is the radiant one. Krishna is the dark, attractive one. And this relationship is what we're being invited into. We're being invited into the ultimate cosmic love affair, to the ultimate coming together of all beauty. So we're following beauty back to its source. We're not leaving unhappy and frustrated because something didn't work here. This is the place where things don't always work. But if we take the ideals from that, those idols, those ideals, those ideas lead us toward the very things that we've been pursuing and finding as dead ends within matter. They're not dead ends. It's just a reflection. And that reflection has a source. And when you learn yoga, you follow it back to its source rather than become frustrated by pursuing it in its material, condensed, temporary form.
I think this is the difference too of when you have a teacher that explains the initiated meanings of how the Vedic culture embedded scientific knowledge into what seems like stories. And to the Western mind, you think, oh, what's another crazy story? But when you're initiated into what they mean, the teacher delivers these subtle, layered meanings. And that's why you need a teacher to take you through it. It's one thing to read the book and you get it at whatever level. And this is the kind of book you'll read. You can actually read this book because we read it probably in editing at least 50 times, but you can read it literally in 4 hours, or you can read it, as I like to say, over a lifetime, because it's that transformational. And
this is why I didn't obscure the verses, which is the conversation between us as Arjuna and Bhagavan. Instead of putting explanations between verses, which then distracts you from the meaning of the conversation, that explaining happens separately. Their conversation didn't have an editor standing there explaining. So it was just a translation error to put explanations in between verses, because then you can't feel the whole conversation. So this is just the first Gita where we've done these things all together. Then you can go to every great teacher who has some aspect of wisdom to share about the Gita and ask them. But if I had put my interpretations in the Gita, it would have biased the Gita away from the conversation, because I'm just one person explaining it. But there are thousands of brilliant teachers throughout the world, in India and everywhere, each like jewels, who have a contribution to make to the conversation. But none of us can change the conversation, because Bhagavan scheduled that. And so this is the gift. You must receive it as you, not for any other reason. You're not joining something. You're receiving it as the you who's been on this journey and who still is and who always will be. And when we all don't know each other, you'll still be on your journey and I'll be on mine and Sandy will be on hers. So live that way and you're a yogi pursuing the ultimate goals.
I feel like you may have answered this question, but we do have a couple. We have one that says, what is the essence to recognizing what our swadharma might be?
So sva means one's own. So the person asked about our swadharma, which means, if you want to just put it in simple terms, this body is called the karana. Think of it as your car. So just think of your body as an automobile, as a vehicle that was designed to do particular things, and that's the best use of it. That's called your swadharma. The best use of the particular mind-body complex that you have been given within matter will put you in a place to be of the most useful service to everyone, and you'll be behaving according to the disposition of that vehicle. In everyday human life, your swadharma is very important. But right now, we've been mostly talking about your sanatan dharma. This discussion has mostly been about things that are always true for everyone. But Ayurveda, as Laura is deeply involved in and deeply able to present to everyone, and Jyotish, as we both have practiced, those sciences help us with our sva, one's own self-dharma, so that it's balanced. It's that no balance approach that has made COVID such a crazy experience. If it had been a lifestyle balancing act, the whole thing wouldn't have had the fear element. We should be living a balanced life, and then that would protect us. And then if it's our time to go, as yogis, we go, okay, bye everybody, it's my time to go. It's like Socrates. You can't bury me because you can't find me. I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. I wonder too with Swadharma, Jyotish, of course, is so excellent for that. I don't know if maybe Sandy can tell us in a minute if you're still doing sessions, but also to me, it goes back to that thing that we were talking about earlier, dharana, or a deep concentration. If you have a deep concentration on what is my purpose in life, wouldn't that reveal itself to you? What if you went into nature with that question and just asked that nature speaks to you, that your own nature speaks to you? It seems to me that
I remember one of my teachers saying, if you want to know what your purpose was, ask yourself what you were doing what you wanted to do when you were 13. Before you got layered over with all of the other what you should be. But
Yeah.
I'll let Jeffrey answer that too.
at 13, I wanted to find someone telling the truth. Because the blueprint of the vehicle is the horoscope, is the Rasi Chakra of Vedic astrology. And the wisdom of knowing how to keep that vehicle running for its whole life in a healthy way is Ayurveda. And all of these Vedic sciences are part of a lifestyle of nurturance and well-being and balance and perfection and respect and honoring of one another. And all of these are the medicines that this sad world of ours right now is so hungry for.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
always teach this knowledge in a soft, loving voice.
One last question. Sophie asks, do you think that the mystical story of Helen of Troy comes out of the Bhagavad Gita? Or maybe it's more the Ramayana.
When we don't know things for sure in history, it's important not to become dogmatic about our opinion of them. There certainly is a great deal of evidence that, and the reason the evidence is clear is this, that Sanskrit is the mother language of Greek and Latin and Aramaic and a host of other languages, and at least 70% of European languages. In the 10th century, Vedic scholars went to China, shared hundreds of texts, translated them into Chinese. Chinese martial arts 5,000 years ago, and Chinese medicine 5,000 years ago came from Indian medicine. They've all been sharing for 5, 10, 15,000 years, who knows how long. So all the civilizations of the world have pieces of Vedic knowledge. And so it's indeed possible. And if you see a resemblance, could think so. But also be a little cautious as a scholar and don't say you're certain. But what you can be certain of is if you see Sanskrit words in Greek, and then Greek words in Latin, and then Latin words in English, you can be very sure that the children came from their mother. So spend some time learning Sanskrit words. It's very important because there are no English words, no Greek words, no Latin words, and no other European language words that can say what the Sanskrit words say. So don't worry about learning the whole language of Sanskrit, but you should get a vocabulary of about 200 Sanskrit words so you can say things English cannot say. That's the most important thing that all of you can now do, is make sure you get clear, correct definitions of Atma. What is the Atma? What is that unbreakable, uncuttable? Bhagavad Gita says, Dehi nosmin yata dehe, komaram yovanam jara. That Dehi, that Atma, goes from childhood to youth to old age and then to another body. A person who's wise is not disturbed by that. One little verse. And when you get that, if you really get it, your fear goes away. You're gone. You're comfortable now. So if you learn the word Atma and don't say soul, which means a little sun, that's just a partial truth. Atma means can't cut it, can't burn it, can't break it. It's immortal. It's divine. It has all these qualities. It can have a relationship with the Supreme, etc., etc. It goes from life to life. So the more you become articulate with Sanskrit, the better you'll be able to shift the paradigm, like the Dharmocracy word. So this is what you can do without having to become a scholar that seems beyond your reach. Just be diligent and learn new vocabulary of enlightenment.
Beautiful, the vocabulary of enlightenment. And I think that's so beautiful what you're saying. I know from studying language that learning language doesn't just give you new words to communicate, but it actually gives you a new way of perceiving and conceiving and imagining in a more expansive world. And certainly with Sanskrit, that just expands so beautifully.
One of the things that we explain in the introduction to the book, and somebody here asked, please explain the root word of hutam. Where can you find that? So one of the things that we explained at the beginning of the book was a linguistic term called skinny words and fat words. And a skinny word would be
Apple.
apple or cup. So no matter what language you translate it into, you can identify the cup and the apple. But if I said to you, identify what is the word of, what does it mean to love or to be happy or the word God, everyone would have a different definition. And that's called a fat word. So the thing with Sanskrit is that many of those words have multiple meanings depending on how they're used. And Jeffrey just doesn't go to a regular dictionary. He goes to a dictionary called an etymological dictionary. Now,
In English.
in English. So what has happened over the years with the previous Sanskrit translators is they only took it back to Latin and Greek. They did not want to say these English words originated from Sanskrit. That was kind of like the divide line of these brown people can't be smarter than us. So there's a colonizational factor in all of the previous translations, which Jeffrey has removed. So to find these, it literally, that's what took 10 years. It's not that you can just go to Webster's dictionary because you're going to get the usage definition, not the real definition of
Not
where
the,
that
not
word.
the root, as it's called.
Right. So
Mhm.
Sanskrit is based on roots that never change over thousands and thousands of years. It means the same. Whereas now, if I say, "Gee, that's a bad song," it doesn't mean it's a bad song these days. It could mean it's a good song, thanks to Michael Jackson. So you can see that's linguistic drift, whereas Sanskrit doesn't have that drift. And we're all sloppy English users. So this is why it's important to learn these Sanskrit words. And Jeffrey has built in a brilliant dictionary glossary in the back that actually will help you get a deeper meaning. And as he explained earlier about the difference between soul and Atma, you will not find a Bhagavad Gita out there that uses Atma. And that's actually the word. Everybody used the Christian term soul. And in the Christian frame of mind, it's a one lifetime paradigm. So you can see the problem of a one lifetime paradigm versus the reincarnation, the heresy that has been in this book that they took out. So one of the things that you look for when you're reading these kind of books.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I know we could go on and on and on and on and
I
on
know.
and on, but we do go, as Jeffrey said, we do go on and on and on and on. So maybe we'll get to do it again.
Thank you, Laura, for the brilliance that you bring, the compassion and the tenderness and the thoughtfulness that you bring to everything you do. It's so wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I feel so honored and so blessed to have found this stream, to have you as a teacher, to have you and Sandy both as such close friends. And it is such an honor to be able to share this with people who have just written the most beautiful comments. So we'll share that with you afterwards.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. It is so important to have this Sangha, as Jeffrey said in the beginning. And I hope that we can continue. Just go to jeffreyarmstrong.com and you can find everything there. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
It's truly my joy as well. And, you know, because we're servants of this great wisdom that's been brought to us, then a life unfolds that's full of all kinds of blessings.
Yeah.
We're always one of those.
Oh.